We have been examining the Master's teachings in some detail, and we have found that they are very simple and based essentially on cultivating values in our existence without much reference to knowledge, values of truth, kindness, charity, love, sympathy, things like that. We have also seen that humanity, for all of them, the problems are the same. Many people say for Easterners, spirituality is easy. And yesterday I have tried to show you that it is not easy at all. It is difficult for all throughout the world, but for different reasons. So the only thing that distinguishes the Easterners from the Westerners is that the difficulties are there for both. The details of the difficulties are different. So humanity seems to share a common heritage, a common goal, and in fact commonness in most things. That is why we call ourselves one. All human beings are one. This was one great reason why Babuji never felt it necessary to distinguish between the East and the West. Because for him, a human being was a human being. I say this specifically because many teachers have made a distinction, offering different teachings to different societies. And to me, that always looked a little like dishonesty. Because it's like giving a cheap bread to an Indian, a rotten bread to an African, and a little unwholesome bread to the Italians, and reserving the good bread for ourselves. That is not humanity, that is not brotherhood, that is not love. So my master had one teaching for all human beings. He had one goal for all of us. There was no distinction, and he upheld the teachings that he is teaching us, that Sahaj Marg has no distinctions of caste, race, color, creed, sex, any of these things. So when we in our turn practice these things and come together in meetings like this, we should uphold these values amongst ourselves too. And we should understand that we are united not because we love each other, because as yet that is a very questionable thing. I mean, whether we love each other yet. But we come together because we have one master, we have one goal, and we are all practicing one system. So it is this commonness which is uniting us here. And that commonness must flower into a mutual love and respect. And that is our work. We have to do it ourselves. Because as you all know, we may travel in the same train to the same destination, but we need not be friends. In fact, we can be quarreling all the time and yet go to the destination. But Babuji always emphasized the need for brotherhood too. It was not enough for us to achieve our individual goal, but we had to build a brotherhood based on his principles. That is one of the three reasons why he insisted on group sittings. Many people ask, especially new Abhyasis, why is there a need for a group satsang? He offered three reasons. The first one was that when we all sit down and meditate together, the result is magnified and much more than the sum of individual effort. The second reason is when we come together on occasions like this, in satsang, in group meetings, first we learn to tolerate each other, then we learn to respect our mutual respect each other, and finally, it is hoped that we shall love each other too. That is the second reason for group satsang. The third reason is a very simple one. He wishes it, therefore we obey his wish. So you see, the group meetings are very important because they multiply the effort that we make. The results are far in excess of the sum of individual effort, and we learn by stages tolerance, respect, and love. I also feel there is a fourth reason. That is, the opportunity to be together should not be misused, because sometimes it seems to me that if we are alone, we have less chance of going amiss, astray. And so to be together means an opportunity and a test. So we have to rise to that too. And while being together, preserve our independent integrity. So this was his one great aspect of his practice, you see, that he could bring people together under one common roof, forgetting all our differences of race, language, nationalistic ideas, and proving what he always maintained, that where religions divide human beings, spirituality unites. That was his highest truth. And again proves his first statement, the credo of Sahaj Marg, that where religion ends, spirituality begins. Because we are frequently being asked, can I worship Christ and meditate? So we must understand that these are like staircases in one building, you see. And it is like saying this escalier is Hindu, that is Christian. That is why Master used to say religions are the kindergarten schools for human beings. They give us some idea of what God is and try to instill in us basic ethical and moral values, nothing more than that. I don't think any religion has ever succeeded in really linking man with God. If you study the history of religions, the founders of the religions got what they got, whether it was Christ or Buddha, they achieved what they achieved. And in all three of them, it was by meditation. This is what the respective traditions say. It is not something we say. See, Christ went up on the mountain and meditated for 40 days, temptation by the angel, by the devil, things like that. Buddha meditating under the bo tree again for 40 days or 41 days. So as I was telling some of our Italian Abhyasis yesterday, Christ, to my knowledge, was not a Christian. But his teaching became Christianity. He achieved his link with God by direct communion with ultimate through meditation. Same thing for Buddha and Buddhism. Before Buddha, there was no Buddhism. Buddha was not a Buddhist. Now I ask this question: if Buddha could achieve God without being a Buddhist, and Christ claimed that he was the Son of God without being a Christian, where is the need for any one of us to be in any of these religions? So I would request all of you to think over this very carefully. To claim that only one religion or one God can take you to God is as ridiculous and as much a lie as to say that only one school can produce good students and not another school. I hope you understand this. Or to say that only one country can produce good people and not another country. Because if we understand this point correctly and not think about it with our heads but with our hearts, we will come to that great truth that God does not offer different opportunities to different people. When we say God is merciful, God is love, He cannot be different to different people or different races. And when we say God made man in His own image, how can a Christian be better than or vice versa? So what it boils down to is that He gave us the same opportunity, He Himself became our goal, and periodically He sent down people to assist us called masters. But like anything which comes from above and comes below, things slowly get harder and harder. And that is the problem with religions. Because you find today every religion says, without me you cannot exist. Christ said it, I am the way and the light, the truth, and none can reach the Father but through me. I agree. It was not a lie, but it had a limited truth when He was alive. In His time, perhaps He was the door to heaven, see. And like a door, it is there for people who are willing to walk through it. It cannot claim that there cannot be other doors. Even our ordinary houses have several doors. Front door, a back door, a side door. And can it be that the house of God can have only one door, and that in the Vatican in Rome? It's not possible. In fact, there is no house of God. It is a vast umbrella without pillars, without anything, you see. And the ancient Indian wisdom says, has the courage to say, one of the most famous Vedic statements, see, that the truth is one, but the wise men speak of it differently. Therefore, we find this enormous big-heartedness, large-heartedness in the rishis of India. You see. Nowhere else do you find it. And that is why the Vedas have no authors. We don't have a gospel according to Luke and Mark. Because we believe that the ultimate wisdom is not human, it is a revelation by the divine. So in our turn, we must understand two things. That God does not differentiate between one human and another. He has not two ways, that one is easy and one is difficult. The way to Him is always the same for all human beings in all times. This is the truth of spirituality and especially of Sahaj Marg. And the proof is here before you, that we are here from many lands, many races, many languages, able to live together with at least some degree of harmony, some degree of cooperation. Precisely because in our heart we have felt this truth, that our Master loved us without distinction, taught us the same things, withheld nothing from any of us, offered us the same goal. I emphasize this because even in India there have been teachers who have had different teachings for different areas, which to say the least is a shame. So my master stood for one humanity, one God, one teaching, and one practice. No difference between us. So all are welcome, all receive the same teaching, all are assisted by the same master, and all are taken to the same goal. Here there is no question of passports, visas, security, nothing. See. This is the most important aspect of my master's generosity, and as he himself said, his heart was the playground for all humanity. See. Now what is it that we blunder around in when we stick to our religions? Make a mistake, you see. It's like a prisoner who has been let out of jail. It's like a prisoner who is let out of the prison, preferring to go back to his cell in the jail and saying, no, I am safe here. See, Mr. Justice Walter Brown put me in jail, so I must be liberated only by him. But if you say, my dear friend, he has retired from service, today even the government has changed, he says, no, I only want him, not this man. Now there is a big confusion in this, because it is authority which put us in jail, not an individual. And when I am released, it is the same authority which releases me. It is foolish to think that that same person who wielded the authority must come and release me now. So please try to understand that authority works through human beings, but it is not the human being who works for us. It's the same thing with religions or in spiritual practice. Those who are authorized to work under the directions of, they offer us their assistance to connect us with that ultimate from which they have come. And this is an act of love for us. Even to say it is charity and mercy, it's reducing it to human terms. Because they come from God who is love, therefore they are all love. And it's a service of love that they perform when they say, don't be miserable, don't suffer, come with me, I take you up. So all this service they offer is to relieve us of our sufferings and take us to our goal fast. And it is based on love. This is the important thing that we must realize. And another distinction between the religions and spirituality. Because as my master said, religions use two instruments of temptation and fear. Love has no place in religion, not in any religion. They either offer you a temptation and say, I will take you to heaven if you are obedient and accept the 10 commandments and confess every Friday. And don't forget to put some money on the plate when you leave. And on the other side, they threaten us. If you don't do this and this and this, you shall go to hell. So where is the love in this? Spirituality says, forget the past. I told you the story the other day about Dr. Vardachari and Abhyasi. He said, what sin have you committed? Come to me when you have done something original. See, it doesn't exist. Because from the time of Cain and Abel, the sins have been the same. Man raping woman, brother murdering brother, you are taking away somebody else's property. What else can you do? I have always been convinced that to feel miserable about the sins that we have committed and to confess it even to a priest or to God is again arrogance. If there is a God who is listening to us, he must laugh. Surely, he will say, my dear friend, even in sin you are the same as everybody else. What makes you think you are great and you have tried to come confess to me something you have done? I mean, psychology says the same thing. That sometimes crimes are committed only to draw attention of society towards ourselves. So you see that the confession has no value. Because if you have done what you have done, knowing that you are doing it, confession cannot erase the effects of that. And I don't think any priest has ever had the power to excuse us of that. This spirituality, my master teaches this truth that what is in the past cannot be possibly changed. What has been done. Forget it. Start living a new life from this moment. You see, this is the way of changing our lives. And he adds that if you sit and brood over the past, you are wasting time which should be used for building your future. Don't waste time foolishly. Leave your past and your future to me. Do what you have to do in the present now. This is his clarion call to humanity. And if you say, Babuji, what about my sins? He smiles and says, it is human nature. So let us remember this, that when we make mistakes, it is a common human nature that we all have. And a Chinese thief is no better than a French thief or no worse. Because I sometimes find these racial criticisms, dirty black thieves, as if a white thief is a clean thief. So you see, spirituality says, remove these distinctions of color, scratch the skin and you are all the same inside. You are white because the sun shines less here, not because you descended with some divine dispensation at your call. In fact, I often wonder why the whites are so much against the blacks, and all the life they spend enormous amounts of money on suntan lotions. It doesn't make sense, isn't it? So these are, you see, these differences are not natural to us. These are created differences, created by religion, by politics, by society, and we have been sort of indoctrinated into these values. Because really at heart, we are all loving people. Again, the proof is here before us. So what it really amounts to is, we have been conditioned by our social, cultural, religious teaching into mutual animosity and hatred. And now comes a master like ours who says, you are one, you are always one, but you have forgotten it. now come together again, become one and march ahead to a common destiny altogether. This is what satsang really means, you see. Many people ask, what is the meaning of satsang? Satsang does not mean sitting together, because even one person can be in satsang. In Sanskrit, sat means the truth, and he is the truth. God is the truth. That's what Christ meant when he said, I am the way and the light and the truth. And sangha means to be together with. So satsang means to be associated with the truth. So whenever we meditate, even alone, it is satsang. And when 500 people sit or 10,000 people sit, it can be satsang only when each one of us is in touch with the truth, the reality of the ultimate. So if you are just sitting with eyes closed and thinking of baguette and honey, it is not satsang. Others may think it is satsang. I say this because there are other groups under other traditions singing together, dancing together, things like that. And this was a warning given to me long ago by Master, that they cannot be satsang. Because that which makes a satsang is missing. So remember this, that in satsang, the contact with the ultimate must be maintained if it is to be a satsang. And if we are to benefit by that satsang. Because each time we sit in satsang and establish that contact by His grace, we achieve several abilities, capacities. We are able to establish the contact sooner and sooner, and the contact also becomes stronger and stronger, until one day it becomes a permanent contact of the strongest type. This is why we have to meditate every day, until that act of meditation becomes so perfect that, as Master once told me, if a man sits and becomes able to plunge into that perfect meditation, he cannot come out of it. So that is meditation, real meditation. Because it is like, you walk through a door and you are inside the house. Suppose you have a system which says you must walk through this door 101 times before you enter into the house. Is it possible? Step in, step out, step in, step out, 101 times you count it. It's ridiculous. But why don't we succeed on the first occasion? Because we have lost the ability to regulate our minds. And this we all know. That is why Babuji used to say, when he was asked, why do you ask for meditation for 1 hour? He said, in the beginning, when we start meditation, it is possible that you may not be able to really meditate even for 1 minute in that 1 hour. And progressively we are able to really meditate for longer and longer times. Because when we start, much time is wasted in adjusting ourselves to the situation, trying to gain control over our own minds, putting it on the object of meditation and keeping it there. If you have seen old movies where we had carts drawn by horses or bullocks, the man had to bring the cart out of the shed, go and rope the horses one by one, yoke them to the cart, and then start driving. This is our situation. First we have to make the body comfortable, and very often you will find that people are not able to do that even during the whole period of meditation. They are twisting and turning and trying to find a comfortable position. After that, we have to start marshalling the forces of the mind, the senses. So if you think over these things, you will really appreciate that to meditate properly takes a great deal of time. And it is only from the time that we really start meditating that our progress begins. So that is the problem with meditation, that while it holds out an enormous promise, it depends on us how we do it. And therefore the Master said, meditate every day. Because by doing it again and again, we progressively increase our ability to take command of the situation. So the practice becomes very important. Not only his teachings, it is his practice. So meditate every day, and he has clarified it must be at the same time, in the same place, because then the mind automatically becomes attuned to what it has to do. So it is advisable to have these practices orderly and in a regulated manner, because then we automatically slip into meditation at the right time. When cows are being milked with machines, electrical machines, if they are not milked at the right time, the milk starts dropping automatically. That is the value of regularity. And the British used to say, they used to insist that people come to work shaven, clean shaved, you see. And you know the reason? Because the act of shaving prepares you for the action of working. Because the first thing a lazy man abandons is shaving. He says, it does something like this and says, okay, I think I'll shave tomorrow. So you see, these are rituals intended to put us into the right frame of mind for that which we have to do. So having the same place, the same time, saves us a great deal of preliminary time in sitting down and starting meditation immediately. So to that extent, they are for our speedier progress.